Okay, so the chat interface is really limiting. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great to get started with AI and exploring this new technology in a conversational way. I mean, what could be more accessible than just having a simple conversation with a piece of technology? It's great, but there comes a point when the chat interface becomes limiting. What if, say, we wanted to test a local LLM thousands of times? What if we wanted to create workspaces or workflows with the LLM, for instance, in NA10 or something like that? What if we wanted to create our own chat tool using a local LLM? In all of those instances, what we want to do is we want to give application access to our LLM. And the best way to do this is to set up a server. This sounds really complicated, but it's actually really easy. And we're going to get into it today. And here we are, we're back in LM Studio, and some things to catch you up on. I've found a new model. It's called Gemma 3, and it's a 270 million parameter model. And it's an MLX model, so it's optimized for the Mac, the MacBook Pro, Apple M1 ecosystem, etc. So that's really great. Quen 4, where are you? I'm going to be using Gemma 3 from now on. Now that could probably change, but now I want to make this model available as a server. And in LM Studio, if I go over to the left here to developer mode, I can click on that and just uncheck that so I can see that from the beginning. You can see this thing called status. And if I click that, you'll see that it says reachable at this address. This is my URL address for the API. Now, quick thing about APIs. Think of APIs as an application's way of communicating. So we've got our chat interface. We've got this chat box. We put our words in and AI gives us words back and we go back and forth. And this is fine for us. And this is probably also okay for applications. It can kind of get around that, but really it would be better if applications had a much more efficient way of communicating with an LLM. And that is really, in a nutshell, what an application, what an API is. It's just an application interface. So like I said, think of API as like a application interface, and the same way as we've got these tabs, the chat, the developer mode, and what is that, my models and discover. An API has got its own sort of endpoints, and think of these endpoints as analogous to these tabs. And these endpoints are available here. You can do get models and chat completions, etc., etc. But don't worry too much about that because that's for the AI and the API to worry about that. And the reason for doing this is just so that we can get a sense, so we can get closer to AI. We can empathize a little bit with AI. So let's do that. Now, this is our workspace, and I want you to get used to this workspace. On the left here, we've got our chat tool, and that could be ChatGPT or anything else that you're familiar with. I'm using Gemini Flash, and that's going to help us in some ways when we get stuck with working on the terminal, because on the right here, we've got a terminal, so we can simulate being an application. It's not going to be too scary. For Windows users, I believe you have something called command prompt or shell or something like that, and it works in a very similar way. So over here, we've got this running and we've got the URL. So let's copy that. And we can see that there's some endpoints. Yep. And we want to get some models. So let's go over and type in the command called curl. And what curl stands for is really just call URL. So think of it like C call URL curl, and we just give it an address. That's it. Simple. So if I paste that and then I want to give it a list of models, so V1 models, and that just gets us a list of models the same way as I can see the list of models in the UI. So now, while we can do all of this with LM Studio, it's actually not the way we want to be going about things. So now the way I like to think of LM Studio is LM Studio is good for shopping. When you're going searching for models and you want to see what works well with your specific machine and your specific hardware setup. But when it actually comes to doing something, that's where this other tool, Ollama, comes in. And Ollama is similar in some ways to LM Studio, but it's much more optimized for server use. And Ollama is not really very complicated. You've got your list of models here, and I want to search for my Gemma 3. It comes up there, the 270 billion parameter model. There it is. So now installing Ollama is easy. It's just like you would install another application. And once you start it, you get this very familiar chat interface, and you can pick your model and you can talk to it. But it really isn't how we want to be interacting with Ollama. So let's quit this application. Back in our workspace, we've got our chat interface on the left, remember, and we've got our terminal on the right. And now that I've installed Ollama, I can just type in Ollama, and that gives us the list of available commands for Ollama. And I can serve Ollama, create, show, run, etc. Now, if I try one of these, Ollama run, I get an error, and the error requires at least one args. Args stands for arguments. And by argument, I don't mean like argument like a political debate type of argument, but arguments from the terminal command line perspective are kind of like modifiers to be much more specific about what it is that you want the command to do. So think of it like a modifier for a command to make it much more specific. Yeah, think of it like that. Well, we're telling Ollama to run. Run what? We need to be more specific. Now, back to our workspace. And we've got a bunch of commands here. And we've got this command, which is pull from registry. And if I do that, and if I go over to Gemma 3, I want to tell it which model it is that we want to pull. So I'm in Gemma 3 now on the website, and this is a model that I want. It's 292 megabytes. Isn't that crazy? So let's type that in and pull, and that downloads the model. Now, if we want to start using that model, just do Ollama run and then use that model name again. And I'm now in the chat interface, say hello and saying hello back. It's just like the chat interface. And if I use Control D, I come out of that chat interface. And if I do clear, now what I want to do is Ollama, and I want one of the other commands we've got here, which is serve, and that serves the Ollama server. So I'll do Ollama serve, and that one doesn't need any arguments. So I can just do Ollama serve, and bang, there it is, it's running. If I wanted to end that, I could just do Control C, and then that ends that. And if I want to have it running in the background so I don't see endless terminal stuff coming out, I can use Ollama serve -D, and that makes it run in the background. But I want to leave this running, and I want to have this terminal as a tab so I can see what's happening. Now, if I open up another terminal so I don't interrupt this one, and actually, going back to this, it says listening on 1270, blah, blah, blah. Let's copy this guy. This is our address. And if we run a curl command there as well, so curl, remember, all it's doing is a terminal way of calling the URL. So let's call that URL, and Ollama server is running. Now, to prove this is a case, head on over and we can see that it's received a GET request from Ollama. And this was the URL endpoint that it called. Now, what we want to do is to allow other services, things from outside of our local machine, to use this Ollama server, because otherwise we're pretty restricted in terms of what we can do. So it's not that we want to have it run publicly to the entire world, but we wanted to have it mini public in terms of our network. So other machines on our local network, and also other services and applications on the same machine also can access that. Doing so just makes building applications and doing stuff for Ollama that much better and that much more flexible. But one thing that we do need to do is get our IP address. And if we don't know our IP address, we can do that in the terminal. So if I do if config, it spits out all of this stuff. But really what I'm interested in is something called netmask. And I could go through and search all of this, but here's a quick trick for you. If I do if config pipe, and we're doing arguments again, and then grep. Grep is a terminal way of searching, of filtering down based on some search, some text that we're interested in. And this is the address on our network. And if I copy this guy and use that address, and we'll see that it failed to connect even though our server is running. So what we're doing here is we're simulating connecting to that Ollama server from another device or another application within our machine. So we can see that it's not really being opened up in any meaningful sense. Now, if you didn't know how to do any of this, this is why we've got that chat tool open on the side. Let's just ask our ChatGPT. And there it's given the command, and this is what we need to do. And what this export variable does is just basically exports or just sets an environment variable to 0.0.0.0. And that's a shortcut way of saying, hey, just allow anybody with any one of these, with anything that's in our local network, get access to this thing. It just kind of broadcasts it, mini broadcasts it internal to our network. So now if I do this, nothing's happened at this point. It's just set the environment variable. And all we need to do now is do Ollama serve again. And if we do Ollama serve and we run on the terminal and we try to access it, and yes, it allows access to this machine. Again, what we're trying to do here is simulate another machine accessing our Ollama server. So we've proven now that Ollama or that other machines can connect to the Ollama server, which is great. So now, hope you found this useful. For future episodes, I'll be going further into actually doing something useful with it. So now that we've got our Ollama server up and running, we can actually do some really cool stuff. Stuff like connecting N8N and creating workflows, creating a chat interface like our own version of ChatGPT, but using our local LLM. And also we can automate things like instead of testing something manually, we can write a script to test things thousands of times, to test the model, to see how it behaves. So yeah, hope you come back.